This is Brevard Watch, the news experience focused exclusively on Florida's Space Coast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Matt Reed. Thanks also to Community Credit Union for sponsoring today's program. My guest in the studio today is Matt Barringer, and he has two special perspectives on recent headlines. He is a city councilman and vice mayor for the city of Titusville. He's also a teacher and coach at Space Coast Junior Senior High School in Port St. John. Thanks for joining us in the studio here
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you having me.
Let's talk about what's been on a lot of people's minds lately, and from the two perspectives that you have. That is school security, law enforcement, public safety. Obviously, we've had this terrible school shooting in Brevard County, and students are very upset since then. From a city councilman's perspective, what is your outlook? How does the city of Titusville approach the security and safety of the schools as part of the community?
Yeah, it's a great question, and first is just a special moment for those who are impacted down south, and just that the reality of it is the time that we live in now. We really, unfortunately, have to plan for not if, but when, and that's sad to say, but that's a reality of a perspective that has changed in our lifetime. So because of that, when we talk about our local schools, they house some of our most vulnerable but valuable citizens. And so as a city, one of the biggest things that I would hope to do and that leaders would hope to do is that it's not a matter of it's the school district to take care of, it's not a matter of it's just the city to take care of, but when we talk about the safety and security of our children, that really entities come together, that everybody who's responsible for a child can have a frank dialogue and discussion about what it's going to take in order to make sure that they're safe. And I think that's the most important thing.
Titusville is one of a handful of cities that have actually shouldered the cost of sending a resource officer to every elementary school. That's not something that we have district-wide. Why?
Yeah, because it's that valuable and it's that important. At the end of it, our community, just like many communities on the Space Coast, went through some really hard times. And because of those hard times, with the decline of the shuttle program, with the decline of just jobs in general, tax revenues decreased, and there were really sacrifices that were made. And unfortunately, public safety is susceptible to those sacrifices. And so as we've increased in revenues and increased in values, we as a community felt that it was valuable to place not just our priorities on our children, but also fund those priorities. And different communities may have different maybe ideas about when that time would be appropriate. I think that time is now, but that's for each community to decide.
You all also are a teacher. You spend quite a lot of time among our kids in our hallways, and you coach freshman basketball at Space Coast Junior Senior High School. What have you heard on campus? What are concerning people today? I think that we as adults or our cable channels tend to sort of squeeze the story into a manageable storyline, but it's got to be messier than that. I mean, what kind of reactions have we heard from, or have you heard from students and your fellow faculty members? Yeah,
and number one is that for our students, the biggest thing that I hear is that it's not a matter of what I hear, it's a matter of how they look or how they view the school day.
Yeah.
Where we hope that the priority every single day is that a student is going to walk in, get straight to work, and just be there for the lesson. They have to feel secure before that they can do that. And the reality is that just having an opportunity to talk about how they're feeling about some things is really this first step, and having some of those discussions and letting those young people get that off their chest. The things that they've come up with, I think evidence to the students of Parkland, whether you agree with what they're doing or disagree with their opinion of what they're doing, they're trying to do something. And even taking a time for students to talk about what they can do in a productive and constructive manner is something that they really want to explore, and it's nice to know that teachers are there to help guide them through that. So that's really what I've heard from our staff and faculty. It's unfortunate, but the teachers that were down south that are no longer with us, but only in memory, they're heroes. And that's the reality of the teaching profession today, is that those students look for those teachers to guide them through not just easy times, but hard times and the most extreme times. And from a teacher, that's an adopted role that I think that everybody's taken, but what it means now has even gone further. And so from, I think, the teachers, that's a concern that they have, and I think an ongoing discussion that we really have to take.
I didn't include this in the introduction earlier,
Yeah.
but you are former U.S. Army, combat trained. You've had a lot of experience with weapons. You've seen some stuff. Do you feel safe in our schools?
Yeah, I personally feel safe, and I feel safe in a car. I feel safe when I drive down 95. I feel safe when I go to the beach, and I feel safe in our schools. And the reason that I feel safe is because the best thing that you can do when there's a risk or a threat is that you can do all the steps you can to reduce that risk or threat. I think Brevard Public Schools is trying to be proactive in reducing those liabilities or reducing those threats. I think our sheriffs, in conjunction with our local law enforcement agencies in our city, everybody does all they can to reduce those threats. And what I really like is that at this moment in time, something that I'm seeing as a positive, and this is just within this past week, is that input from students as well is helping drive some of those changes. And they're really coming up with some great ideas that, either myself or other folks maybe haven't thought of, but it's great to see their input taking into action.
Before the shooting, I joined a group of 16 student body presidents and a psychiatrist from Parish Health Network, our school board members. We went to Tallahassee, and the students themselves made an ask of the legislature for more professional mental health services on campuses. And then, of course, the shooting happened, and now you had students not only going to Tallahassee and asking for a number of measures to try to help secure themselves in their schools, but we're seeing these young citizens organize some peaceful walkouts to protest student violence, make some requests for things that might not be altogether popular among everybody else that's out there listening to talk radio or watching television. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so as a teacher, I teach social studies, and specifically I teach U.S. history and civics. So it's a double-edged sword, and it really defines, I think, where we're at in education, is that education's a science, but it's also an art. And so we've taught our students what's happened. We've taught our students how to do this. And the art is how to do it in a way that really is going to achieve some kind of a social change that folks find that they need for their communities. And it's not always that our youth are the ones who are driving that change. And this is one of those moments in history where they've decided to get active and try to do something. I think it's going to be interesting to see both the outcomes, how they're met and dealt with. I think that's just as critical as what they're asking for, whether it be right or wrong. And I also just think it's really going to be interesting to see, just from an outcome standpoint, what comes of it, not just for today, but how long will they keep it up? How long will we listen? And then what can we do together in a constructive way for our communities to overall make them better? That's what everybody wants. So.
I watched the superintendent speak to a group of predominantly black churches, not a faith-based partners, NAACP in South Melbourne just recently. And he was recounting watching the students in Tallahassee after the shooting and what they were asking for. And he was saying, I think as you just kind of mentioned, we really should be listening to the student voices here because our adult arguments that always end in stalemate have failed them. And what they're asking for is more mental health services on the campus. They know their peers. They want real training in active shooter things. They have so many fire drills. There's never been a fire, but there have been shooters, and they want training. They want hardening of their school campuses. They don't care as much as their parents do whether their schools look like prisons. And they do want some kind of common sense controls. They're unusually supportive of gun rights, millennials are, but they still want to keep firearms out of the hands of unstable people, and there must be some way to do that. So it's a pretty interesting agenda, and we'll see if they get somewhere with that. Well, when we come back, the city of Titusville becomes one of the short list of cities to pass an ordinance allowing medical marijuana dispensaries. Our councilman in the studio will explain why.
At Community Credit Union, we are always looking for ways, big and small, to make your life better. Manage your accounts online, anytime, anywhere, with eBranch Online and mobile services. Use your mobile device to check your balance, make a deposit, pay bills, apply for a loan, and more. It doesn't get any more convenient than this. Search for the CCU mobile app on your device and download it for free. At CCU, bringing you better options matters. Find out more by visiting ccuflorida.org.
This is Brevard Watch. I'm Matt Reed. I'm in the studio today with Matt Barringer. He is a vice mayor and councilman of the city of Titusville. He's also a teacher and coach at Space Coast Junior Senior High School in Port St. John. Matt, let's talk about a recent decision by the city of Titusville. Made a 3-2 vote by the city council to allow medical marijuana dispensaries within the city limits. I know that's been a big issue for a lot of cities after a constitutional vote. Explain that. What is the civics lesson behind that? What were the policy considerations that you had to noodle through before making that decision?
Yeah, so it is by far, I think, one of the most complex decisions that I've been a part of, and it will probably be the most complex decision that I'll ever face as a council member. And the reason that I say that is because there's so many issues that are embedded in the issue of medical marijuana. Number one, it was brought to the ballot. And so in our democracy, that's how we do things. That's how we make decisions. And it went 70%, went over 70%. And so 70% of Floridians said, we're going to add this as a constitutional amendment. As a civics person guided by our Constitution, whether I agree or disagree, that was definitely an overwhelming referendum by the people on the issue and how they felt. And even when there's maybe disagreement of language that was on the ballot, how it got there, or so forth and so on. So, were voters really given a full picture? Were they really given a full intent? As a council member, I think that there's due diligence for voters, and so they can be as informed as they want to be. And so that was one issue, just saying, was what they voted for really the intent? And I think that's true because of the overwhelming number. The other issue, though, just quite frankly, is that it's still federally illegal. Any way you cut it, it's federally illegal. And we have this idea of rule of law as the supreme law of the land. And so when our Constitution federally says that something is not okay to do, we as a state have agreed to abide by that. And this is one of the biggest arguments that I think that there is. So in order to really pick that apart, just in myself, there's 5 members to a council, so there may be some different opinions. But for myself, the biggest thing was that I believe in home rule. I believe that the local community can make the best decisions for a community. And that I think that with confidence and fidelity, people made a decision on what they wanted through voting. And I think that you can still, under the guise of states' rights, still make laws that are different than the United States government's, and that's okay. We can add those to our Constitution, and I think that that's okay. So being so, I think as a city, we're well within our means and rights to adopt an ordinance that would be reflective of our city. At the same time, there's an argument, and I think a valid argument, that if somebody wanted to make a constitutional argument about the legality of what Florida has done or what we as a city have done, I think that there's valid argument, but I think that's an argument to take place in a higher court, and quite frankly, outside the state of Florida. I think that that's one to be handled in Washington, D.C. There's so many states that have moved towards using medical marijuana that I'm of the opinion that we have such a heroin epidemic in the United States, specifically in Brevard County. It's a problem. We have an opioid epidemic with folks abusing pain pills. And, when you go for research on this, when you go to a medical marijuana dispensary, what I didn't find there was 20-year-olds. What I found there were 50-plus-year-olds. And what I think for its true intent, trying to find some kind of relief that they haven't been able to find with either other options or cost options that were effective for our retirees. And that was something that I kept in mind too. So
that was something that I noticed in the data from the vote when it happened in Florida was that it wasn't the millennials that pushed this over the top, although they tend to be pretty libertarian on the issue. It really was baby boomers and even some of the people in the silent generation, so to speak, who voted for this like 70% in favor. Even in a red, older skewing county like Brevard County, the vote in favor of it was well above that 60% that's required to put it on into the Constitution. That's pretty striking, and I think it's, like you said, it's setting up some kind of small R Republicanism type of conflict that's going to have to be resolved by the courts.
Yeah.
You spend quite a lot of time, as we've talked about, in the hallways and classrooms, talking to kids. You spend time in the gym with them, and you hear how they think. How do you think today's young people are going to impact and or change politics here in Florida in the next 10 to 20 years?
I am hopeful. And the reason that I say that is because I think, unlike maybe a generation that's come before them, where in my own age, it took a while to get there to see the value of politics. I think that this generation, specifically those that are coming out in the past 5 years or 7 years, and they're hitting that threshold of adulthood, that they've seen that you can be involved and it makes a difference. I really believe that. And so I also believe that the millennial generation has a strong propensity for ideals. And so coupling those ideals with an opportunity to impact change, whatever they may believe that to be, I think I am hopeful that we see more engagement into our democratic system and how we're going to arrive at the decisions that best suit our community. It's really interesting to see the faces that I see involved, even our model Senate for our school system. We have a model Senate. It sends kids from every school, every high school, and they debate well and they believe in what they're doing. It's just awesome to see. I look forward to the change.
What inspired you to go into teaching, of all things? I mean, you could have chosen any career probably and pursued it as a path. I mean, why teaching?
Yeah, so this was, I'm a little older than when I started. So, I'm in my 40s, and I had a career previous to this. I was grateful, and I'm thankful for the career that I've had in the past. But what I realized was that I was spending a lot of time in our community trying to help. And that's ultimately what got me into politics. It wasn't to go be a politician. It was just to help where I can. And what I brought it back down to ultimately was, for all of the issues that we may have, the folks that can change it are the young ones. And if we're really going to impact the change as a community, if we really want it to be better after we're gone, we're going to leave a legacy. And what that legacy might be is up to the work that we do. But it's on for the younger ones to carry it on. That's what got me into teaching, because what I really realized is that the community that we have is going to be led by the students of today. And that's awesome. It is so good to know that they are one time going to be in charge of our community. And when I'm old sitting on my front porch, that I have some great hardworking folks, creating great ideas for our community. That's what got me into teaching. And the impact that a teacher made in my life when I was in high school. I wasn't the greatest student. I went to an alternative learning center, which, for most of my kids, they wouldn't guess that in a million years. But it was a teacher that, instead of taking the time to go over a sentence, took the time to sit with me when I had a meltdown that changed my life. And I hope to give that back to the students that I teach. So
that is awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, when we come back, some recent launches have brought the excitement back to this Space Coast. Does this mean that Titusville's back?
At Community Credit Union, we are always looking for ways, big and small, to make your life better. Manage your accounts online, anytime, anywhere, with eBranch Online and mobile services. Use your mobile device to check your balance, make a deposit, pay bills, apply for a loan, and more. It doesn't get any more convenient than this. Search for the CCU mobile app on your device and download it for free. At CCU, bringing you better options matters. Find out more by visiting ccuflorida.org.
This is Brevard Watch. I'm Matt Reed. Again, my thanks to Community Credit Union for sponsoring today's program. My guest with me in the studio is Matt Barringer. He is a councilman and vice mayor of the city of Titusville. He's also a teacher and coach at Space Coast Junior Senior High School in Port St. John. Matt, recently a SpaceX Falcon Heavy launch caused the happiest traffic jams I've seen up and down the Space Coast, maybe since a big shuttle launch. It got me thinking, what's happening in Titusville? Are they experiencing a renaissance compared to the way things were right after the space shuttle program was scrapped? What's going on?
Yeah, so what's going on is the fruit of the efforts of a lot of hard work over a lot of years. And it's an amazing time to be in North Brevard, specifically in Titusville and Brevard County. And Titusville is my home, so it's easy to see. And what's happening is exactly that. We went through a really tough and dark period there. But what was amazing was that during that time, something that the residents of Titusville figured out was that folks weren't coming. The help that maybe we would have hoped for as they were working out on how to help the community in the Space Coast, the citizens of Titusville just pulled up their bootstraps and got to work. And it literally was from pounding pavement to replanting flowers, to repainting a house, to repainting one step at a time, whatever we could do, whatever somebody could do in the community to make their little piece better. People did. And that went both not just for residents at home, not just for our schools, but what was amazing was to see the community come together in a concerted effort that really inspired others to keep going with it. And after years of doing that, and with assistance and partnerships, and with the best collaboration that I think that I will ever see in my life, I hope I see it again, but just between everybody saying, here's what I can contribute, here's what I'll do, that the people of Titusville are now beginning to see the fruits of that effort, and it's coming in a tidal wave. And that is an amazing thing to see. It's a tidal wave of great things happening, of transformation. And not just transformation of our community, but transformation for our nation. And to have Titusville be a home of that is just absolutely amazing.
I was talking to a legislative aide for former County Commissioner Robin Fisher back when they were trying to get support for rebuilding the mall out there. Was it the Miracle City?
It was at the time, yeah. Oh, Lord.
And rebuilt Titus Landing.
Yeah.
And she said that they really encountered two types of personalities in Titusville. People who had been there for a long, long time were very down on the mouth and just didn't think anything was going to work. And a younger generation of people who had, not necessarily younger in age, but a younger, newer generation of people who had moved to Titusville looked around and said, this is great.
You're right.
And we're perfectly stoked with the way things were going.
Yeah.
You experienced the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. And what's really interesting is that I think that dynamic, I really believe that dynamic exists everywhere. I think that any time that as a community or anything that you do, even as a person, when you step out in order to do something that could be great, that it's very easy to say all the things that could go wrong. It's very easy to point out everything that could be wrong or isn't right. But it's really hard to take that step. And when folks are willing to show the courage in order to try to make something better, I hope, and the lesson learned is that what it looks like when it's successful, because that's what we have right now. It was a lot of courage by a lot of people to take steps into the unknown on the benefit and just goodwill that we're really trying to do the right thing. And now to be able to see some of those successes. Not every one of them's perfect. Not every one of them is exactly what we said would happen when it started. And that's totally okay, because I know we're better for it. I know that we've got better results than we had before. And that's the most amazing part. So I always believe in falling forward. And I think that's the best thing that you can do.
One of the big steps for the Brevard County economy that our chamber experts and people who deal with entrepreneurship have told me on this program is that the next step is after landing the SpaceX's and the Blue Origins and new projects for Boeing and else, Lockheed Martin and other companies, is that supply chain level manufacturer.
Yeah.
Somebody who builds the widget that becomes part of a rocket or builds some kind of solar array thing that unfurls for the satellite maker. That type of smaller scale company. What is Titusville doing to try to encourage that type of, if not a startup, at least it's an entrepreneurship thing or manufacturing?
Yeah. So to be honest, number one is just saying we want you. For any company, it is competitive. When you talk about economic development in communities that are supported by, new job creation, that is competitive, and it is competitive well beyond the scope of just a single city. So I think one of the worst things that can happen is you get a lot of work from the governor's office, you get a lot of work from Space Florida, you get a lot of work from our local Economic Development Commission, and then if your community says, no, we don't want it, that's a real tough position for folks to continue to say, let's go fight for that community. So I think one of the biggest things has just been, we want you. Step one, and not just we want you, but we want you, and we have qualified people who are ready to go to work when you bring jobs to our community. Or if you're somebody who's had jobs in our community for quite some time as an existing business, that as that community, we're ready to support you to help you grow. And I think that that's an important thing. So it's not just these, very large companies, but the supply chain that follows along with them, the person who makes the part for the satellite, we got a building ready for you. And we love to have you. We got a beach and a river and a great way of life and a great way of life where employees can enjoy whatever salary you're going to pay them. So we're thankful for anybody that comes. And I think that's the most important part.
How would you size up our school system's ability to prepare kids for that kind of industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that our school system is taking steps in order to go one further. I think I'll speak to our community in North Brevard because that's the constituents that I serve. And so, the school system recognized that some opportunity for students in North Brevard, that there's an opportunity to gear it specifically for the jobs that are coming, which are the 21st century jobs. I mean, these are the ones that it takes more skill than just showing up and putting on a belt. But at the same sense, you might need some of those folks too, who can, walk in, be on time, produce or manufacture something all day long, and have a good salary doing it. That's exciting. So I think that we've looked at our school system has really looked at diversifying what we're trying to incorporate. I'm ecstatic about the Launch Institute that's coming to Space Coast next year. I get to be a part of that, which I'm just unbelievably excited for. It's project-based learning, and it really not only focuses on the traditional grades that you would think of, but also is grades on how can you solve a problem, a real-world problem, and how can you create something, and how can you work with another individual in order to have a great outcome. I think the school district is aiming in the direction, and I look forward to seeing what comes of it.
Well, I try to be as objective a journalist as I can,
Sure.
but I can't help but root for Titusville.
Yeah.
After having been here for so long, it seems like it's getting its stuff together. Well, that's our program for today. My thanks to Matt Barringer, City Councilman for the City of Titusville and teacher at Space Coast Junior Senior High School. My thanks also to Community Credit Union for sponsoring today's program. Watch for us every Sunday on Spectrum Channel 496 and on YouTube, #BrevardWatch.
At Community Credit Union, we are always looking for ways, big and small, to make your life better. Manage your accounts online, anytime, anywhere, with eBranch Online and mobile services. Use your mobile device to check your balance, make a deposit, pay bills, apply for a loan, and more. It doesn't get any more convenient than this. Search for the CCU mobile app on your device and download it for free. At CCU, bringing you better options matters. Find out more by visiting ccuflorida.org.